Over 3 years ago, a project was announced that promised something all Sega Saturn fans might be interested in. A plug-and-play device that allows you to play Saturn ISOs without any modification to the console. The project is currently in beta, but someone was nice enough to lend me one, so let's give it a try. Before I begin, I just want to remind everybody that this is a glimpse into beta hardware and beta software, and it would be really unfair for me to call this some official review of a product that's technically not even finished yet. So while I think it's absolutely awesome, and I think the final version will be even better than this, please just keep that in mind, and I'm certainly not harping on anything that could possibly be fixed or improved in the final version of it. But anyway, let's jump right in and check out the Satiator. The Saturn Optical Drive Emulator from Professor Abrasive. Setup is just about as easy as it gets. Copy a menu and firmware file to an SD card of pretty much any size, then copy some Saturn games. As long as the main files are in the root of the card, you could create any other folder structure you'd like with as many subfolders as needed. At the moment, only bin and queue rips are supported though. I originally had a wide variety of rips from multiple sources, including my own disks, but none worked other than the bin and queue files, so I ended up scrapping all of mine and just downloaded the redump set. Luckily, the entire redump set seems to be totally compatible with this device, and all the rips are pretty high quality. After you've prepared the card, simply remove the door on the back of the Saturn and insert the device in the MPEG slot. This was originally designed for the video CD card that allowed for VCD playback, and it's not something I've even seen in person before. In fact, as far as my personal use is concerned, this was essentially an unused slot up until now. The way the card is positioned makes it really easy to access the SD card without removing it, but if you do need to remove the Satiator, there's a tab that pops out and makes it easier to access. Once everything's set up, simply replace the battery door and power on the Saturn. As we can see here, the Saturn first checks to see if there's a disk in the tray, and will boot to that first. That's right, you don't need to do anything if you'd like to use original disks, just use them as normal. I think this is a massive bonus over your average optical drive emulator, as there's no hardware mod required to make it work, and there's nothing to swap out. Either play your original disk, or just use the device. If there's nothing in the disk drive, the console will automatically boot to the menu, which at the moment is a very basic list. Subfolders are supported at this time and games boot, but not all other features that were announced are available at this time. As you can see, boot times are currently equal to a healthy disk drive in an original Saturn. The creator hopes to eventually implement a turbo mode which will allow for much faster booting, but that's for a future firmware update. Speaking of firmware updates, this device is about as easy as it gets to update. Whenever there's a new firmware or menu available, simply drop the new file on the SD card and overwrite the old. That's it. Just drop the files on, power the Saturn back on with the SD card in it, and let it do its update. The Satiator might flash red and the Saturn itself will stay on the home screen. I waited about a minute, then power cycled and immediately got the new firmware. I was curious how action replay support would work, and at the moment, it doesn't. Both the stock and pseudo-Saturn modified action replay look for disks and don't seem to work at this time with the Satiator at all. Luckily, the 4MB cart does work, which allows access to the handful of games that either require or are enhanced by the extra memory. Please remember that these RAM carts are always so temperamental, and if you have any issue with yours, it most likely has nothing to do with the Satiator. Try cleaning both the cartridge and slot. And on my Saturn, I even need to jam a piece of paper behind it to keep it working consistently. Overall, the device seems to perform great. Throughout the course of the beta program, there have been improvements and bug fixes regarding FMV video streaming, as well as some other errors that initial beta testers found. I don't really want to concentrate on any of that though, since this is still a beta product. I will say that it performed pretty nicely for me, and I expect most remaining bugs to be fixed before a public release. I spoke to the creator of this project and wanted to confirm two things that aren't available in this current version of the beta. First, how will 2-disc games be supported? Games that use the save mechanism, as in support power cycling the console between discs, are supported as is. Games that need hot swapping are not yet supported, but the mechanism will be that you open and close the real CD drive in order to swap disks. So hopefully multi-disc support will be added before the official release, and in my opinion, hitting the eject button to switch games is a perfect solution, because it would just come natural to anybody who was used to using the Saturn anyway. There was one more feature I wanted to ask about, and I realized it was a long shot because I'm not sure how technically possible this is, but I was hoping there was some way to have your save games saved to the SD card rather than the RAM on board the Saturn, which is a big issue for some people every time the battery dies. This is technically very difficult. Of course, there will be a Save Manager tool attached to the menu for moving saves between RAM and SD, but actually providing a native save location when in-game means putting some code into the SH2 memory space. I anticipate putting together a tool, call it a booster pack, which you can flash to an AR cart, which would then support native saves, cheats, etc. So that seems like a perfectly good solution to me. If you're playing a game that has vital save game support, such as RPGs or games where you're really saving your progress, not just high scores or anything like that, then whenever you're done with your game, boot back into the Satiator menu, copy the save game file from the Saturn to the SD, and now you have a solid backup of it. Also, I think Saturn users are probably used to having volatile save support, so adding an extra step like this probably won't be that big of a deal. And don't forget that there's different FRAM mods that you could do for the Saturn that help increase the save game support, as well as eliminate the issue of the save games deleting after you remove the battery. So overall, as long as the price is right, this thing seems awesome. And my favorite part is that no modding at all is required. Just plug it in and either continue to use your Saturn as normal with discs, or utilize this optical drive emulator. And the worst possible thing that could happen is if there's some kind of compatibility issue with disc-based games, just pop it out. It's not like you have to open up a case or unbolt anything. Just open up the battery door and slide it right out. Unfortunately though, there's still no pre-order or any definitive release date, but if you do want to support the project, Professor Abrasive still has his Patreon account open. A quick note on the Patreon: many backers have expressed their concerns over how long this project is taking. My personal opinion is I choose to support Professor Abrasive as a developer and not just this project. At some point though, I hope he either announces a follow-up product for us to continue supporting, or just closes the Patreon and opens pre-orders for more funding. Either way, I plan on supporting Professor Abrasive as long as he has a Patreon account open, because I know from first-hand experience how crucial crowd support like this can be to long-term projects. That's just my opinion though, and do whatever you feel is best. Well, that's it for this time. If you liked this video, please consider signing up for any of my support services such as Floatplane and Patreon, as your support is what keeps these videos and research going. Also, please check out the weekly podcast that keeps people in the loop of everything going on in the retro gaming scene. It's available both as a video and wherever audio podcasts are found. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.